Football is back, brothers and sisters. Fall camp is here for ASU. It's a new season of Sun Devil football. And as you can tell, we're bringing you some new looks here for Speak of the Devils in 2021, thanks to our great friends at All AZ Sports. I'm Joe Healy. Of course, I've got Brad Denny with me. Get used to our faces. You're going to see a lot more of us this season. We got to give a huge shout out to our sponsor for these video features. You know them, you love them. The sensational DeFalco's Italian Eatery, Grocery, and Deli, located in Scottsdale at 2334 North Scottsdale Road. You can check out their menu online at defalcosdeli.com. Pro tip, take it from us, grab an Il Purista, but you really can't go wrong with anything that's on the menu. Now, to help welcome college football back into our lives, one of our favorite guests who we love to catch up with this time of year, a proud and distinguished alumnus of Arizona State University, now representing for all of us as one of the premier personalities at ESPN, Scottsdale's own Matt Barrie. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I'd say it every year, and I'll say it again. This is always my annual reminder that we're getting really, really close to the start of the college football season, and for me, that's a good and exciting thing.
So first things first, going to put you on the spot right out of the gate. Obviously, you're a Scottsdale guy. As you heard, we're sponsored by DeFalco's Deli, a longtime staple of Scottsdale. Have you had the pleasure of enjoying a meal of food over there at DeFalco's?
I've been to DeFalco's a couple times. It was a long time ago before I moved away. But you guys said it. There's so many staples like DeFalco's. I know Casella's is another one of my staples in the Scottsdale area from where I grew up. So when I go back there, my wife and I come out there to visit, I always try to make a couple of stops at some of the places that I love. And so, based on what we've all been through over the year and a half with local businesses some not making it through COVID, the fact that DeFalco's is not only around, survived, thriving, sponsors this great show, I've always been a big fan.
Awesome. Now, of course, we got college football starting this month. Plans everywhere are for fans to be in attendance at every stadium in the country. Just for you personally and professionally, how good does it feel to be this close to kicking off such a glorious time of year?
Yeah, it's bittersweet. It's awesome because college football is my favorite sport, and it's a large part of my job at ESPN. But it also means summer's over and free time as I know it is gone. My life pretty much ends once college football season starts because of all the duties that I have. But it's always an excitement towards the end of the summer, Labor Day weekend when this thing gets started. It's the best sport on the planet. I'm looking forward to seeing full stadiums in the fall. I'm looking forward to seeing coaches be able to yell, not have a mask on their face. So it's a good time of year. I know that to me that there's a lot of stuff that's going on in college football, which I'm sure we'll touch on, but to be able to get to the finish line of a long off season and be able to play college football and I can't remember a better week one slate of games than what we have. It's going to be fun here in about 24 days, I believe, until the official kickoff. And a month from today, we get Georgia Clemson on ABC. We get Alabama, Miami. We have some good games coming up in week one.
Now, of course, we're going to talk about the Devils since we got you here. Sun Devil fans are kind of equally excited and a little bit nervous right now. We're going to get your take on both sides of that equation. Let's start with the positive side of things. ASU returns virtually its entire starting lineup, a stud third-year quarterback in Jaden Daniels, crazy experienced defense, a run game that could be as good as any in the conference and even compete with some of the best across the nation. What are you looking forward to seeing the most from ASU, and how far can this Sun Devil team go, in your opinion, in 2021?
Yeah, I've always been one of those people to kind of measure expectations. You guys can listen to this show that I've been on the first few years in the Herm Edwards era. And I said, give it time. We're going to need time to build this thing. But this is it. This is the season. The waiting time's up. The development time's over. This is it. This is the season that can catapult Arizona State into a national stage and onto a national stage. I believe, top to bottom, they should be mentioned in the conversation in the Pac-12 with Oregon. I think they're better than USC. I think they're loaded. Anyone who asks me about Arizona State, I say they're loaded. And this was the team that Herm Edwards had his eyes on when he took this job 4 years ago. And the time for rebuilding is over. They've got everything they need. You got an experienced, talented quarterback. You have receivers now, albeit they had a small indoctrination last year, but they're a year wiser. You get another year in Zach's offense. The running backs are absolutely tremendous. The defense is going to be stingy and nasty. I don't always like saying, hey, you know what? You should probably win the conference, but that's where I'm at with this Sun Devils team. They need to not only bare minimum be in the conversation for the Pac-12 championship game, but I believe they have what it takes to win the entire league.
So is it a conference championship or at least division championship or bust for the season, or for the Sun Devils this season? Is that basically kind of the baseline for determining whether 2021 is a success?
Oh, they need to come out of the South. There's no doubt in my mind they need to come out of the South. Anybody who watched, they had the COVID issue last year. Anybody with two eyes and any semblance of football knowledge saw that they were the better team than USC when they went to the Coliseum. Then they come back against UCLA. They just weren't ready. UCLA is going to be a better team this year. But I believe that now with where you are, with the depth that you return, that you need to start expecting Pac-12 South or bust. That's the kind of program you need to be. There isn't any program in any other conference. I guarantee USC doesn't feel this way. USC is never one of those teams that thinks, hey, you know what? Maybe this is our year. Maybe no. They expect to be in the Pac-12 championship every year. Oregon's the same way. Washington's the same way. You look in these other conferences. Oklahoma and Texas expect to play in the Big 12 championship game. Alabama, LSU, Auburn, those guys expect to be in. Florida, Georgia, Clemson, Florida State. I can name you all the big-time programs in the country. None of them think, oh, maybe this is our year. And to be a program consistently among the best in the country, you have to have that mindset. And again, listen back to my appearances the last couple of years. I've been measured with the expectations. This is it. This is the team that can elevate the program to that next level. So for me, absolutely, it's win the South or bust for this team this year.
Now, of course, the NCAA review, as Coach Edwards prefers to call it, that's going on. A lot of rumors, a lot of reports swirling for several weeks. The facts of the whole matter are still really unknown. But we're under a month until the kickoff to the season. Like you mentioned, fall camp is officially underway. What does this team have to do in order to prevent that outside noise from seeping in and poisoning what otherwise could be an incredibly memorable season? Yeah,
I don't think it will. I really don't. I've spoken with Herm at length. Obviously, the conversation will remain private. I know that this team wants to play football and wants to prove people wrong. Here's what you have with these players. The bond between player and head coach, especially with Herm being your head coach, is completely different than anything we've ever seen at Arizona State. And the bond between position players on both sides of the balls and their coach is really strong. When players feel that that's being attacked, when they feel that their head coach, someone they look up to, a father figure to them, is being attacked, a defensive side of the ball, Antonio Pierce, and some of these other coaches, when players feel like that integrity of these people is being nationally attacked, it does something to them, gives them an edge, gives them an attitude like, you know what, fine, it's us against the world. And I really I do not believe that this outside conversation will get inside the locker room because there's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing any of these guys can do about it. It's going to be handled by the NCAA. These things take time. And by time, I'm talking about 12, 15, 18 months. Not next week, not before UCLA, not before USC. And so if anything, this noise, I think will galvanize this team, and they'll play with a chip on their shoulder because they feel like a man like Herm Edwards is being attacked.
And that kind of echoes something that Chase Lucas told me last week about the players kind of circling the wagons in a way, given these allegations. But obviously this is going to be a black cloud that's kind of hanging over the program for the foreseeable future. How worried, given kind of what's known and what's out there at this point, should ASU fans be, and what impact might this have on Herm Edwards' legacy going forward?
So there's a lot there because I don't I know what I know, and then I know what I don't know with the allegations and what's being said. I cover college football nationally for a living at ESPN, and so I know things that go on at programs. It is a black cloud. You can't throw sunshine on this and say that everything's going to be okay because, honestly, we just don't know. I mean, part of me looks at it and says, well, were they the only team doing it? Or were they the only team that had a rogue staffer go anonymous and leave a dossier because they weren't happy with the situation they were in? And I know that there are certain things within this program that allegedly happened, and the NCAA is going to have to figure it out. I know this. I know Herm Edwards. I know who he is. I know him as a man. I know him as a husband. I know him as a friend. I know him as a colleague. I know him as a father. I know who he is. And look, the NCAA has got a lot of problems right now, a lot of problems. And that may end up working out in Arizona State's favor. There's all the garbage going on. But I can guarantee you that ASU is not the only one, and they're not the only one to have stuff happen in their past. You know, look at every big-time program in the country. There's been something. I would hate to have this tarnish a man like Herm Edwards' reputation, and I don't know that it will, and I don't want to get into a legacy conversation yet because I don't know that Herm's written his legacy at Arizona State. And I hope this doesn't end his legacy at Arizona State. There are so many other things going on in this sport right now than a COVID dead period of kids taking visits. So, look, again, there are things that I know that are being alleged, and there are things that we don't know if are true or not. And all that stuff's got to come out. But we seem to have reached a point in ASU's program that there was finally some positivity going on, and then this came out. And look, rules are rules. We'll see what the NCAA finds. It's going to take some time. And hopefully, at the end of it, character of a person plays into it. And again, and that's Herm Edwards. And to have his name out there as someone doing something like this, I know for those of us who know him, you don't like hearing it.
A big question on the minds of many Sun Devil fans is if this will be Jayden Daniels' final season in Tempe. Put yourself in NFL scout mode. What's his NFL draft stock like at this moment, and what does he need to do in order to improve that stock over this year?
Well, you know, Sam Howell is an amazing quarterback. Spencer Rattler is an amazing quarterback. The kid at Cincinnati is an amazing quarterback. I don't know why his name's slipping me right now. Kid at Liberty is an amazing quarterback. There's a lot of good quarterbacks coming out in this draft. And so you have to look and see where you are in the season. I know these receivers are young. These running backs are young. Jayden has an opportunity to really build rapport with them this year. Last year, you just throw out the tape. I mean, Zach Hill was new. He didn't have any time. He didn't have an offseason. He had 4 games. And even by Jayden's standard, he didn't have a good season. And so I think that you need to see where he starts, see how he develops, because he's still raw. We saw him as a true freshman, an abbreviated sophomore season with a new offensive coordinator, and now you have this year. And so I'm not going to start the NFL conversations with him yet. And I don't think any of us should, because I think there's still too much to see from him this year to see how he's grown and developed. Now, get me to week 8, get me to week 9, and he's tearing it up, and he looks like he's got a big presence in the pocket, and he's making big throws down the field and finding these NFL-bodied receivers, then the conversation changes. But at least right here, right now, I don't think NFL should be a conversation about Jayden until we reach the halfway point of the season to see how he's developed a little bit.
Now, the quarterback will always have perhaps the best chance, but who are some other Sun Devil players that you think have an opportunity to make a national name for themselves with their play this season?
Yeah, I love the running backs. I love White. I love Trainum. Like, these guys are good. And I'm telling you, and I get so much flack for this at ESPN for being a homer. It's not that I'm a homer. Yeah, I love my alma mater. I'm an Arizona State guy. But you'd be hard-pressed to find 3 better backs in one backfield that could probably start anywhere else. And so you look at their backfield and you look at some of the other backfields getting attention across the country, these 3 guys are going to be known on a national level before it's all said and done because they are special. The defense is special. There are so many guys. I know Jones had a bad ending to the season last year. So what? He's got an NFL body. He's an NFL talent. Jaden's obviously the star, as you mentioned. But I think White, I think Trainum, I think some of these young wide receivers that are growing into the maturity of their body, there will be 1 or 2 guys that pop this year that people weren't expecting. Everybody knows Merlin. I think he's going to bounce back and have an unreal year. He's an NFL-type guy. But watch for the running backs. Watch one of those guys separate themselves. Kind of like, remember when Kalen did it? When he did it a couple of years ago, Balazs kind of came out of nowhere. He set the NCAA. I think he had 7 touchdowns. It was that against Oregon. Who do you have 7 against?
Yeah, 8 against Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech, right. And that shootout with Mahomes. So, look, there's going to be someone who gets to that next level, and I really believe it's going to be one of the running backs because those guys are talented.
So you've mentioned it before. Obviously, we all know last season college football really wasn't the same, and ASU was significantly impacted with just the 4 games. But there was one unforgettable night among those 4 games, and we would have to discuss that with you since you're on with us. That 70-7 demolition of the Arizona Wildcats in Tucson. It's good for the soul for Sun Devil fans to reflect on that night. Just tell us what you were thinking when you were seeing that whole thing go down.
I kept saying I wanted more, and I wanted more, and I wanted more. And I wanted to inflict so much embarrassment, and I wanted more. And every time they scored, I said more. And every time, more. Run the starters back out there. Because that's the kind of game that steals the soul of a program. It legitimately steals the soul of an entire roster. And with what ASU had been through, again, if you watch football, you know ASU had talent. They shouldn't have lost the game at USC. They just shouldn't have. Everybody on that team will tell you that. But then they got COVID coming back, and so you really couldn't evaluate this team. But that 1 week, they were healthy. They go down to Tucson, and it was almost as if it was a couple of months of just frustration boiling over on the field, and they were able to take it out on Arizona. No matter what went on last year, every single one of those players, and Jackson He's obviously the star because of the history that was made, but every single one of those players should hold an amount of pride for the rest of their career that they legitimately beat Arizona into submission to where they couldn't do anything about it. I don't care where you go for the rest of your life and what you do in your career, and odds are it's not going to be pro football because those stats are so small. You will always have 70-7 on your nameplate for the rest of your life, and that just feels good. And every time I just like more, score again, sack him again, pick him off again. It was incredible. I hadn't smiled that loud in a long time. It was a long season. It made it great.
Now, ASU is, of course, among a few teams, USC, Utah, looking as potential South contenders. Oregon and Washington seem to be in their usual position as North favorites. Who do you ultimately see facing off in Vegas this December?
I think it'll be Oregon and Arizona State. Kayvon Thibodeau is another worldly talent. They brought that Anthony Brown kid in at quarterback. I spoke to Mario Cristobal this summer. He loves this team, and he should. They're loaded with talent. He's been recruiting well. They're the class of the North. Stanford's come down a little bit. Shame to see because Shaw had that thing going for a while. We'll see what Jimmy Lake can do in year 2 at Washington. But I think right now it's Oregon. It's absolutely Oregon. And in the South, you mentioned those 3 teams. Look, people had best pay attention to UCLA, and they best respect UCLA because Chip and UCLA, they will get some people this year. Mark that down that people aren't talking about it because USC is the brand of the league. USC is brand 1, Oregon's brand 2, so they're easy picks. Keaton Slovis is good. He's a good player. USC's always got the 4 or 5-star talent. Well, they've had that forever. And so I would tell you that if you're in the South, watch out for UCLA. I think Arizona State USC, UCLA. I think of the three best teams, Utah is always going to smack you in the mouth. Colorado had a good thing going last year, first year there for Darrell. So it's a competitive side of the league, but I ultimately think it's going to be Oregon and Arizona State playing in the Pac-12 championship.
And it's a new era for the Pac-12 with some new leadership, perhaps a little bit overdue. What are your early impressions of new Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff?
Yeah, I like him. He came from an entertainment background, and I think you kind of need – I know a lot of people go, what's his background in football? Well, who cares? The last guy had a background, and what happened there? And so you've got a guy that's into planning big entertainment and building things and making them bigger. What's been the biggest knock on the Pac-12 from Pac-12 fans? Well, we don't get national attention. We don't get this. We don't get – well, fine. Now you have an opportunity to have someone help build that. He's already admitted the worst part of the Pac-12 is the network. It needs distribution. It needs to be on a bigger platform. It needs to get the national attention of the SEC network, the ACC network, the Big Ten network. And so you needed someone to come in and say, hey, you know what? I've got a great canvas of schools, of championship caliber schools, championship caliber education. This is a conference out west that's kind of just hiding. Just wait till I get my hands on it. I firmly believe he's got like a blank shell that he's going to build this thing into one of the more legitimate conferences in the country. Now, you need a team that can win. My contention with that is top to bottom, the Pac-12 is competitive. There are those that say, well, you don't have a dominant team. Well, yeah, probably yes. But I would take the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th team in the Pac-12. I'll put them up against the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th team of any of the other conferences. I really would. And I think Pac-12 would win. So I think the commissioner has a good opportunity on his hands because he's already going to automatically be more popular than Larry Scott. Take that and run with it and see what happens.
So focusing on a larger scale view of college football, obviously this summer, two huge topics coming into play. First, of course, the ability for student athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness, and more recently, the major shakeups within conference realignment, starting with NIL. Let's get your take on that. Is it good for college sports? Is it bad? If we're looking a few years down the road, what are some of the most significant ways that the whole NIL topic will have impacted major college football programs, how they compete, how they operate?
I don't know that we're going to know the effect of NIL for a while. And I don't know that we're going to like what happens to it and what happens with it. Because it was beaten through so quickly that there really isn't any jurisdiction on it to where you can kind of govern how it goes. And so basically what you're doing is you're just throwing around the money in plain sight rather than throwing it behind closed doors. People think, well, now if you've got the biggest booster network in the country, if you're Alabama and Bryce Young hasn't even started the game for them yet, he's allegedly already made close to $1 million, you can run with that recruiting. I don't know what to think of it yet because we haven't seen the underbelly. You know, I was on with Herb Street on SportsCenter a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Kirk, you might get a situation where college quarterbacks driving up to practice in a Bentley like they do at NFL training camp. I don't know. I don't know. I do know that the players should have an opportunity to market themselves because of the money that is made. And I do know that there should have been more money going to them via stipend or maybe a trust put away that they can touch when they're done playing. That I do know. But by the time the NCAA tries to gets involved in this, it's going to be too far gone. And I firmly believe that NIL begot this conference realignment. Because now all the SEC and all these conferences are waiting to do. They're like, wait a second. Second, these kids are allowed to get paid, then what role does the NCAA play? So if we can get the NCAA out of the way and get these kids paid, then I can create a super conference, push the NCAA out of the way, and start my own thing. And so right now, if you really look at what's going on, I think it's clear that there are conferences aligning themselves to create a 32-team super league a la the NFL, 32 teams, and just overthrow the NCAA. And that's what I think eventually we're going to work our way to. Because, guys, the NCAA was created to govern things that are not going on right now, which is NIL. Their job was to prohibit that. Now that that's no longer prohibited, what are we doing?
So obviously you're talking about the conference realignment. As we all know, Texas and Oklahoma are the first ones to go. Bolton, the Big 12, to the SEC. Asked you to be an NFL scout a moment ago. I'm going to ask you to be the Pac-12 commissioner now. So what are your moves right now and in the foreseeable future to try to not only get the Pac-12 back into better standing, but to create some level of competitive traction for what others are doing across the country?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know there was a report we had yesterday on SportsCenter that the Big 12 and Pac-12 were having a conversation. I think we'd be naive to not understand what that conversation was. If I were the Pac-12, I would immediately go snatch up BYU. I would automatically I'd go snatch up Boise State. I'd get to 14 teams and put those two teams in the league, and then I would start looking around and I would start picking and choosing some other teams and schools, and I'd get to that 16 number. If you get to that 16 number, you can then start having legitimate conversations about merging into that Super League. Now, one of the things that makes the Pac-12 special is it's an academic powerhouse. Up from Cal and Stanford and the UC football system and the UC school system, there are so many great academic schools. I know that those schools should be proud of that, and that goes into consideration of who you allow into the league. But if we're talking athletics and money, you need to get out there immediately and start looking at who you would add. BYU would be my first call. Boise State would be my second call. And then I would start looking around and then choosing some of these teams, maybe in the West Texas area, getting closer to your region. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go so far out of the area that it's laughable that it doesn't make sense anymore. But I would strongly consider adding those two teams immediately and then starting to discuss how you get to 16 or how you get to a super conference, because then that's when you can legitimately start growing into a power that we're talking about that right now the Pac-12 lacks.
Is this like inevitable move towards super conferences? And, it seems like we're just pretty in the near term, maybe close to a power two before these super conferences take over. Is this good for college football at the end of the day?
Again, I don't know. I mean, I think about where this all started. We started this, I don't even remember how long ago now, with the 12-team playoff discussion, right? Everybody was all in the 12-team playoff because it looks as if it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, NIL happens. And all of a sudden, this offseason in college football has been one thing after another of change. I'm more of an old school guy, and I appreciate conference rivalries, and I appreciate the way that it used to be, but I can't be get off my lawn guy and be adverse to evolving. I don't know. The fact that we're 24 days away from when we tape this to the start of college football in a month from some of the biggest opening games we've ever seen, and all that we've talked about this offseason has been a 12-team playoff, which was good, and then the NIL and the realignment. It just doesn't – it's not the college football that I grew up loving. That's not to say that eventually that it will get to a point where it feels like college ball again, but right now I don't know that it does.
Well, Matt, of course, as always, we appreciate your time. We certainly appreciate you representing the maroon and gold there at ESPN. Of course, our viewers and listeners can catch you on Twitter at Matt Barrie, watch on ESPN this college football season and all year long. We certainly appreciate you. We'll catch up this time next year once again.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. As always, I'll come on and just remember the last time that Arizona State had a legitimate opportunity to say that they can compete for a Rose Bowl. I think that's what's going to happen this year. So enjoy every Saturday of it or Thursday, whenever they play, because I think it's going to be something special out there in Tempe.
And thanks once again also to all AZ Sports and our great friends at the Falco's Deli. For Brad Denny, I'm Joe Healy, and this has been Speak of the Devils.